Hi class, in 264 BCE, Rome goes to war. So how are they going to build a Mediterranean empire? It's going to take war. Capita Mundi, they're going to be the capital of the world. So let's see what happens. Now, with the Punic War, Rome is going to be victorious. This first Punic War was set off because Carthage, and I'm going to point them out on the map here, they're going to be right on the very top of Africa. And what's going to happen is Carthage is going to invade Sicily. They wanted to expand their power into Sicily, and the Romans also wanted to expand their influence into Sicily, which is just off the coast of the boot of Italy. Romans feared the growing power of Carthage, and the word Punic comes from the Latin word for Phoenician, who were the founders of the Carthage society. Now, this first war lasts 23 years. The Romans learned they could not conquer unless they controlled the sea, so they built a navy. And of the 7 major naval battles they fought with the Carthaginians, they won 6 and finally defeated them and took possession of Sicily in 241. This is going to become Rome's first real province. They're going to go ahead and seize the islands of Sardinia and Corsica. And it was during this time the Romans developed an attitude never to accept defeat no matter what. One example of this was a soldier by the name of Marcus Sergius. Class, he was wounded 23 times in battle, crippled in his hands, crippled in his feet. Twice he was taken prisoner by Carthage and each time escaped. He lost a hand in battle and later had to use an iron hand. There was a very high standard set for soldiers during this time. Remember Marcus Sergius. But the First Punic Wars humiliated and infuriated Carthage, and this is going to lead us to the inevitable Second and Third Punic Wars. And here's an aerial view of an artist's rendition of Carthage located on the Bay of Tunis. And it's really a credible chart here. You can see their walled city backed up to the desert is pretty incredible. The rapid growth of the Carthaginian power in Spain is going to lead to the renewed conflict with Rome after 2 decades of relative peace. And the Second Punic War begins when Carthaginian general Hannibal captures a small town with which Rome had formed formal ties of friendship. Hannibal then launches a surprise attack. Class, he crosses the Swiss Alps and invades from the north, laying waste along the way with an army of nearly 25,000, 18 war elephants, and he was able to defeat the Roman armies that responded to his invasion. In the following year, Hannibal won his greatest victory at the Battle of Cannae, in which he inflicted some 40,000 casualties on the Romans. The wisdom of Rome's policy of extending rights and citizenship to its allies, though, is going to be important because Rome's going to need them now. Their soldiers are dying. And its allies will serve as soldiers and help them defeat Hannibal, along with the fact that they lowered the draft age. They're getting younger boys coming in, and they forced enlisted criminals and slaves. But it's going to take 14 years to defeat Hannibal. And all really that remains after the Second Punic War was the city of Carthage itself. Hannibal is known as a brilliant and daring strategist of war. His win at the Battle of Cannae remains a classic study for war enthusiasts. This is really considered one of the greatest tactical feats in military history, class. But because the war against Hannibal had claimed so many Roman lives, Romans wanted vengeance, and they called for the destruction of Carthage. In particular, a senator by the name of Marcus Cato ended all of his speeches with the phrase, "Carthage must be destroyed." The Third Punic War will result in the brutal, bloody destruction of Carthage. Men were killed, women and children enslaved, and the city was burned to the ground. They even cursed it. And its territory would ultimately become a Roman province in Africa. So how do you keep everyone happy in Rome? Well, mass entertainment and free food. How are you going to pay for it? It's really paid for by taxes, so it wasn't really free, was it? But they called this bread and circuses. every able body in Roman cities would get free wheat, olive oil, and port. Theaters and amphitheaters were built in large numbers. For example, Circus Maximus and the Colosseum. Circuses, class, are not like Barnum and Bailey Circus. They are oval structures for chariot races. I'll show you a picture of one in a minute. The Circus Maximus accommodated 250,000 spectators. That's more than can go watch the Alabama football games and Auburn games. The Roman Colosseum, as we learned about when we watched The Gladiator, is a magnificent marble stadium providing seating for about 50,000 spectators. Its structure was so precise that it was possible to flood the arena with water and stage mock naval battles within its walls. Unfortunately, some of the battles that they had inside the Colosseum did lead to death for maybe gladiators, animals, and later we'll talk about Christian martyrs go to the Colosseum to their death. There were a list of patrons within the cities in Italy, and men and women of wealth are going to provide support for a lot of gladiators and entertainers, educators, and artists. And also we're going to see Roman life is going to be improved with aqueducts built to bring water into urban areas and flush out the bad stuff. Unfortunately, cities like Rome will be plagued with crime, disease like malaria, and fires. Slavery will prove to be about 1/3 of the population. That's a lot more than the Han Dynasty ever allowed. And remember Spartacus, we've talked about, but some of these slaves worked as craftsmen. Many are going to work on the latifundia. And what's a latifundia? It's a large tract of private land specializing in agriculture. Class, it really created its own micro-society. So here's the Circus Maximus. So you can see how enormous it is for chariot races. Books and literature within society was widely available. We know a lot about the Romans because they wrote a lot of things down, but 20% of the population or less were actually literate. Books were mainly read by the elites. The leading poet of Rome was Virgil, and he wrote the Aeneid, talking about the wandering of Aeneas and his sense of duty and loyalty and glorification of Rome. A lot of writers are going to just provide an illustrious high background for Rome. Let's make ourselves look good. The poet Ovid wrote about the art of love. Frank talk about sex and the art of seduction. Where to meet girls, what pickup lines work. And later he wrote from a woman's perspective. He said this, class, and I think it's good advice for you today. If you want to be loved, you must be lovable. Unfortunately, Ovid proved to be very unpopular with the Senate and was ultimately exiled. Now, Livy was an early historian who wrote about Roman people and its history, but he was writing under the Emperor Augustus, and he embellished Roman heroism to please the emperor, and he was often referring to events that had happened 200 years earlier. Interestingly, many historians relied on the work of Livy up until the 1850s. It was held as true until a new wave, a new generation of historians came along and actually did the research and found that much of it was a lie. So here's these aqueducts. They built these aqueducts to transport Rome huge amounts of water needed to sustain city's population. And these, the idea of the aqueduct spread to their provinces. These structures are going to be built to bring water to all Roman-style cities. This is an aqueduct in modern Spain and really one of the best preserved, but it's still there and it actually still works. And class, this is a bust of Julius Caesar. In my next little lecture, we're going to talk about the rise of Julius Caesar and what's going to happen with the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire.